Hi, welcome, Kikella here, and today I have just a quick painting idea that I had of this kind of grassy field overlooking this very rainbowy sky. So I'm just spritzing my paper to work kind of wet on wet for my rainbow sky. Kind of envisioning this being sunrise, no particular place. But our sky is going to have some kind of blues, purples, pinks. Imagining a nice kind of ocean sunrise, but we're not really going to paint an ocean. Maybe our grass is covering the ocean in this little scene. I'm going to try to see if I can do this one in under like 15 minutes, maybe like 10 minutes. Just as a nice kind of warm up. And going in very wet on wet with my blue. This is some phthalo blue. I'm blending that down with water before I add in some French ultramarine. That French ultramarine is going to granulate. You can already see it starting to separate a little bit, giving me some interesting mixtures in the sky color. Now, when I'm mixing a sky, I always want to make sure I'm being kind of careful with blue and yellow. I don't want a green sky. So I'm going to add in some pink, and that's going to kind of naturally create a little bit of purple areas as well. This is just some buff titanium mixed with some pyrrole scarlet. I'm kind of just using some paint that I had left over in my palette. I like to do that for warm-ups because it challenges me to create with just what I have and not waste any paint. Not that painting's ever a waste of supplies, but we're always trying to, use everything that we have. So I love using just like the little bits of leftover paint in my palette. We can kind of see the pink spreading upwards into that French ultramarine. I added a little yellow for maybe some kind of sunlight there. And I'm going to be careful not to mix that blue and yellow, not get green. Going in with a little purple. Again, I'm using kind of a lot of colors here, but I wanted this kind of very rainbowy effect of the sky, very pastel rainbow. Adding in purple, maybe the purple's clouds and like the yellow is kind of sunlight peeking through the clouds. I'm not going super realistic or any particular shapes, not committing to shapes. I'm going in with some lavender. Maybe that's also a cloud. Still very wet on wet. These shapes are going to not really be too defined. Just blending out my cloud-ish shape and adding more clouds. So that way it kind of frames the bit of yellow we see. Notice I'm not really touching the yellow because I don't want to muddy up the middle. I don't want that to end up looking too green. Where we are going to put green is at the bottom because remember this is kind of like a grassy field or something in the foreground and then our sky in the background. My sky does need to dry. Just adding a few touches of color here and there where I feel like it's drying kind of light. And I'm hoping that bottom area dries pretty quickly so that I can start to work on my grass in the foreground. And play it safe and just start from the bottom so that way I'm giving just a little bit more time for the top to dry. For this one, since it is a warm-up and I'm not going super realistic here, I don't mind too much if the green bleeds a little bit, but being a little bit careful not to go too much into the sky area. Yeah, I actually like the way this looks now. Kind of just like an open field, but we're going to go more of like very foreground grass shapes. So we're going to do some big grass stalks. And just going kind of squiggly, and you can see my brush is pretty dry. I really like the effect of kind of the dry brushing when I'm doing clumps of grass. It's kind of all one color right now. So we're going to go in with a few different shades of green, adding different amounts of gray to it to get a darker green, or adding a little bit more yellow to get a brighter green. So here we're going in with a darker green and just trying to use the tip of my brush, not being too controlled. I'm purposely holding my brush way further up than I normally would because I just want these very kind of messy strokes, as this is just like wild field of grass. And as our underpainting is drying, we can start to go in with some more detail. Some of my further away bits are going to be little tiny strokes, and then we are going to have some, big blades of grass. And I like using, I think this is a very small brush, just like a size 1 or 2, just going in with some kind of squiggly shapes in the background. I want to make sure I have some color contrast here. So I am going in with a little bit of my darkest darks. And that's going to be pure Payne's Gray for those darkest darks. And then again, this is just different mixtures of the Payne's Gray and my green, which I believe was Green Appetite Genuine. And just kind of going and getting some different shades to show that this is just a kind of diverse field. Now, at this point, I do not really like how this is turning out. So I do a couple of things here to bring this back into something that I'm happy with. At this point, I feel like it just kind of looks very blobby. So I'm going to go in with that really tiny brush again and give some more kind of very thin detailed strokes. Putting in those dark shadows so that everything's not just like one uniform blob. And then getting even looser, even freer. I feel like my strokes look too controlled. So just going a little more loose and putting in more contrast. Sometimes I feel like when I don't like how a painting is turning out, it's because there's not enough contrast in the painting, that maybe everything is too similar in value. So really going in kind of dark in the foreground, because if the sun is behind all of this, the front is going to be a little darker because that's kind of in shadow. So this was just pure Payne's Gray there at the bottom, adding in that shadow area. Now I kind of want some, kind of imagining this being kind of seaside-ish, so I want to put some like sea oats or something. We're going to go with some brown kind of stalks in my grass kind of popping out. Maybe this is sea oats. They are green. Sometimes they're like pampas grass, and then have, the kind of browner stalks. Just kind of inserting my own experiences of going to the beach. I do live in Florida. But I feel like sometimes my biggest struggle as an artist is being too controlled. And I like the way my work looks a lot of times when I'm controlled. But I'm trying to break free from that and work looser, more expressive, more spontaneous. So I'm adding kind of the bits on the end of like the seed, like wheat. I don't know what you call that. But I feel like it looks very out of place. So this is kind of a very expressive movement painting that I have these like rigid stalks. That's okay. We can always fix things, adding in just some messier strokes to purposely kind of loosen it up a little. And you can see I get more confident as I'm working, that I'm starting to kind of go away from that very representational look and go for a more abstract look. I'm still not super happy with the way that my kind of stalks or sea oat trees, they look kind of more like trees now, are turning out. So I do have a couple of other tricks up my sleeve here to make this look better. Or better to me is spritzing away some of the detail, letting that color flow together. And also spatter. I love a good spatter in paintings. I feel like it adds that movement to a painting. Going in with some green gold. I know I'm introducing another color really late into the painting, but that's okay. That green gold is kind of pushing through some of the other colors and giving me the highlights I want. I really ended up with something I like here when I didn't super like it about halfway through. I stuck with it though, and this was a great 10-minute warm-up. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed painting.